conversation is different. She was doing it from the perspective of a non-technical founder, right? You're a non-technical founder. You don't need to have any tech knowledge. So Dulitha is going to give us his perspective as a techie and as a CTO and as a someone who has a very strong technical background. So from a tech perspective, what you should be looking at and the things that you need to be aware of, right? So this is going to be an easy to understand session, but Dulitha, like I've seen his presentation before, he is very detailed and very thorough, right? So you do need to follow his presentation very closely, right? Because I've seen it like he's going through an actual tree, right? So make sure you pay attention. Otherwise, it's like if you're here for a while and then you doze off for a bit and then you come back again, you might have lost his train of thought, right? So make sure that you pay attention to the whole thing, right? And you don't go off in the middle. So as an introduction, let me spotlight Dulitha.
Oh, hey, everybody.
All right. So Dulitha is the CTO and co-founder for Aristotle. He's also the co-founder of Cabbage Apps. He's also an on-deck fellow. So we're very fortunate to have gotten his time all the way from the US. So he's gotten up early in the morning to do this. Is why he looks a little sleepy also, right? He's gotten up early in the morning to do this session for you. So we're very appreciative of the fact that he's taking his like half an hour of his time to do this session for you. So he's a very interesting person. So you should do an office hour with him if you can possibly get his time. He's interested in psychology, JavaScript, and machine learning. So he's someone that wants to understand why people buy products and services. And he's also interested in building a set of tools to engineer the how of the buying process. So I think this is related a lot to maybe the work that he's doing with Aristotle and then also what he did with Alakazam prior to Cabbage Apps as well, which was also another really interesting startup that he worked on. Okay, Dulitha, I'm going to hand it over to you. You can run the session any way you like. So if in the middle you want to break for Q&A or anything like that, feel free to do so.
Sure. Cool. All right. Thank you, Ami, and thank you everyone for giving the time. I see some familiar faces that I have sort of spoken to a while back. I'm just going to switch this into gallery. Hey, Dilan, I think I have Dilan and Hiruni, I think I've spoken to you also like a while back, right?
Yeah, dude.
So let me first, before I dive deep in, can I get a show of hands on who have launched their product and have customers? If you can put reactions, that will be quite, from the reactions on the Zoom, it will be quite easier.
Maybe you can raise your hand if you have, or put your thumbs up.
Yeah, put a thumb.
Reaction.
Yeah, put a thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, we have one. Okay. How many else? 2, 3. Okay, quite a bit of folks have done. Well,
actually, I think most of them actually have. They just not raised their hand.
Okay. Let me also be clear. When I say launched and have customers, that means someone's paying it, right? The idea is that. So then can I have a show of hands on everyone who has built like a MVP? Anyone who has not built an MVP? Okay, there's one. Okay, who else?
So Deepa, I can see her hand raised.
Yeah.
So I think she's in the process of building it.
Yeah.
Kiruni is also in the process of building.
Okay.
So I think that is actually probably a more accurate, the negative one.
Okay.
Rajesh may still, he has built something, but I think he's still also in the progress.
No, he has already launched.
But is it fully built? You're still building, right? In the process of building, I think. It's not fully built.
I have built, but I am redesigning everything, building based on
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
So, can I?
What you can call?
I'm in the process of building.
Yeah, so he's also in the, so I think about 3 people are definitely in the process.
Okay, can I then get a show of hands on who has done like customer development? Like how many folks like have spoken to customers, customer development? There's a lot of people. Okay, cool. So this session should ideally be very interactive because I'm not going through a slide deck. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Um, I'm basically gonna go through a flow chart of how I have seen sort of like this early stage journey work out. And I have been fortunate enough to see this like hands-on at several times. And I think like I'm trying to explain to you guys more of like a mindset and how to kind of think about things. So first thing is that when you're building like products, one of the most important things to keep in mind is like make something people want, right? And you have to always ask this question, have I built something that people really want? All the time, right? And the way to think about that is like when you ask this question, you can ask, how do you find whether you have built something people really want? At each stage, it's different. So the initial when you are doing customer validation, it's mostly like have you identified something that people really want? And then when you actually build it, it's like have you identified something that people are actually using, right? So it really changes, but the motto of it is make something people really want. If you do that, everything else becomes easy. If you don't do it, everything else becomes really hard. That's the tougher part of it, right? So then I'll explain to you guys a little bit more about my general sort of mode of thinking when it comes to setting like the initial like how do you think about like setting like running a product. First is like there's this idea called explore versus exploit, right? It's actually a computer science idea on like it's an algorithm where you kind of figure out how much do you want to explore the field and then how much do you want to exploit, right? And initially when you are like building the product and when you have nothing launched and no one paying you a single dollar, you're still in an explore. The moment someone pays you a dollar, you are basically you have to identify whether you want to go into exploit, right? Because the mindset of explore and the mindset of exploit is very different. In explore, what you're trying to do is sort of validate your hypothesis. And when you are trying to validate your hypothesis, you can do this in variety of different ways, right? You don't need like just sometimes you think like, oh, you need to have working software or you need to have a pitch deck, you need to have certain things. But the thing is, you actually don't need a lot of things at all. Mostly what you need is a 2 minute talking pitch. So for example, let's say you go to a dinner party and you can say to somebody, hey, this is what I'm doing. That's the first version of that pitch. And this is sort of like where you go and kind of try to get into like iterative hypothesis for like customer development. There's like a really good blog post that I will send to you guys later on. But the idea of that is to sort of like define a set of goals. So determine what you learn about your customers or potential market, then kind of identify the goals of that particular user. So I'm gonna stop right now and ask you guys, how many folks over here are like building like B2B products? Like, is everyone building B2B or is there anybody building B2C? Anyone build anyone
B2B.
anyone building B2C? If you can raise your hands. I think Dilan is building B2C. Anyone else? Rajesh?
Yeah,
You're
B2C and B2B as well.
okay, B2C and B2B as well. Okay. I have a special section where I'll talk about this thing. Dilan, is your solution like completely B2C? Is it like fully B2C? I don't, you're on mute.
Yeah, it's mainly B2C, but there's a B2B part as well, because connect with restaurants,
Who's paying you?
Customers, the B2C.
B2C, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Why I asked that is that the way you conduct this like initial customer hypothesis is different if you do it for B2B and B2C, right? The difference is like how you sort of like identify what are their goals, and mostly like B2B users tend to have goals that are more like work oriented, whereas like B2C users have more like emotional and more social goals that they think they usually end up having, right? So then it's like, then the idea is that you have to like sort of formulate some hypothesis saying that, hey, this is what, like, let's say this is what you think the user wants, or like the customer wants, and what you should do is try to craft questions to identify whether that is actually what they want. One of the key things about this is like customer development part of it is that your goal is not to sell to the customer. The moment, or like when you talk to the user, you are not trying to tell, like sell the product or anything like that, because when you try to do that, what happens is the output the answers they give would be very biased. So you need to ask like open-ended questions on how to solve their problem. So it's kind of changing from your sort of like the solution to a problem. So in like, if you take like, for example, a to-do list, you would go and ask, how do you manage your day-to-day tasks? Instead of saying, do you use a to-do list to manage your day-to-day tasks? So it's very, you have to use words in a very different way to get the answers that they think. Because the hardest part of this customer development thing is people are very quick to bias that if you change a word here and there, the answer they give will be very different. You have to be very careful with it, right? And the key over here is you have to like do this cycle. Let's take a single problem space that you have. Let's take a single problem space and a solution. You will have to interview probably about 8 to 12 customers, right? When you interview somewhere close to about 8 to 12 users or customers, you will realize that the answers they give end up becoming quite similar. It is at that point you can decide like, okay, you know what, there are no new insights. I can actually move on to the next one, right? When you do this, let's take a particular problem and a solution that you have. You can't go to the next step without answering this question, which is like, how much of a pain is this problem, right? So this is very tricky for B2C, but for B2B, it's more or less like, if there is a particular user, let's take task management or project management app, and you are going and selling it to the founder, or like let's say the founder or project manager, or like head of project management. If they say, yes, I'm willing, like this is what I want, like right now, and I'm willing to pay, like if you say, would you pay, I don't know, $1,000 or whatever the number you say, and if they say, I'm willing to pay that, I need this right now, that is a very good indicator. What that means is the problem is a hair on fire problem, that they need some solution right now. And most of the time, I think someone's mic is. Oh yeah, so thanks, Rajesh. Most of the time, what happens is like when someone comes and when someone says, yes, I want this solution and I'm willing to pay for it, what that mostly means is that they should be having some alternative and that alternative is not good enough. So for example, if it's like project management, if they are using Excel to do their project management work, it's the alternative that they use. And most of the time, the hair on fire problems, people already have an alternative, but it's not good enough. But if you can't, like, you might, the what I call weak sauce in this B2B space is you come and tell someone, hey, I want to do this, but then they don't have an alternative, or like it's something completely new for them, right? That's a very tricky space to be in, right? The reason is you might end up now like trying to build the product and all of that work, and then they might not use it because it was never really a problem, right? So this step of identifying what do they really want and how do you sort of figuring out what to work on is probably like one of the biggest parts of the foundation, right? For B2C products, I think the trick over there is I'm not an expert in this subject, right? So you might want to talk to other B2C founders on how did they figure out what exactly it is. I think it's mostly my way of thinking about it is I think it's if they have paid for similar solutions or what have they paid for would be a good indicator. Like for example, if it's like a fitness app, right? If someone has already paid for a fitness app, or if someone has already paid for a fitness instructor or a gym, that would mean that that's a good customer for you to get your customer discovery insights from. So that's probably the way to go for like B2C model. That B2C part of it is still a bit murky for me. So I would suggest anyone on B2C to kind of talk to other founders who have done B2C, because there's a little bit of a different monster, right? Next part of this is like you guys might ask like, okay, like this is great, but how do you like actually do it? The trick that I found was that what I have done several times is that we like sort of write like a Notion page, and on the Notion page we write down like who, what. I'll send you guys a template also on that, like who, what is it for, etc. And with that, you will basically you can basically send that as your landing page to anybody. So imagine you have that page, you say to a customer saying, hey, I'm like, you have that a small blurb that you can send as what you're doing, and here's the website, would you be willing to have a conversation for 15 minutes, right? But most of the time what happens is people just read the blurb, they never go check the link. But in the blurb, it's important to mention their problem rather than what you're trying to solve. So I'm like like if it's like something related to like productivity, I'm interested like I'm working on like how to solve like productivity in a remote team environment. I've been looking at these kind of things. Would love to see how we can help you guys. So like what kind of problems that what the line that I found that works most is what kind of problems do you guys have? It helps, like when you say that, people are like, okay, I'm willing to talk about my problems to people a lot, but people don't like to be sold. So that's the trick of getting that thing. Next part of it like is like, I'm gonna do a quick time check. Okay. Next part of it is that volume. So for each idea and solution, you probably need to do about 8 to 10. The moment you have done 8 to 10, you will know exactly, okay, is this the problem I want to work on? And is this a hair on fire problem at all? Next comes the, actually the cycle of building, right? Even till like one of the principles that you have to sort of get to is that try as much as possible to, in the explore mode, to be lazy as possible. Don't try to write code. Don't try to do design. Try to be as minimal as possible. Because the reason is, at each point of this, you might actually throw away the idea and just go back to the beginning of this whole loop, like go back completely here. Why? Because it's way worse to work on something that put more energy on something that you know doesn't have any legs. It's better for you to like kill your darlings, move on to the next one, right? And like, let's say that's the principle. So the principle is try to be as lazy as possible in the explore mode and to do the minimal thing that you need to get it done. And most of the time, the minimal thing works out. So let's try to get into a little bit more about what does this really mean, right? So the solution, like when you come up with a solution, you have like some sort of a solution design. When you speak with enough people, you would identify, hey, can I build like a high fidelity prototype? Like, can I build a prototype that's like a Figma prototype or some sort of a prototype that I can show to somebody? This prototype could be something that you use to, even go and sell the product, right? You might go and use this Figma demo and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Are you willing to pay? And if someone says yes, take their money, right? And I'm telling this from experience. I have done this. It works. The only thing is you have to be confident that you will go till the end, right? The whole idea of that is if someone says that they are willing to pay and they give you like money to solve the problem, you have landed on a crazy good problem. And the whole exercise of this is for you to find a good problem, not to build a solution. You need to find a problem that is very, either it's like untapped, or like problem is interesting, or like there is someone who needs this really badly that other people are not like looking at it. There's like very little competition, right? So this solution design stage is very interesting, right? I'm going to stop right now, right, for a bit. I'm going to ask you guys, do you guys have any questions? Because I went through like a lot of things at once. If you have any questions, raise your hand and you can ask like right now. Oh, Hiruni has a question.
Yeah. Hi, Dulitha. Nice to see you again.
Hey, Hiruni.
So it's really interesting what you like the customer development part you're talking about. And now my question is related to how you were like, just ask the customer, are you willing to pay? And if they're willing, like they're gonna pay you, just build it, right? So there, is it not an issue? What if you're solving the base problem, but they ask for a lot of customizations to build on top of the whatever base you're building? So do you still think it's okay to just build it, or like do you have any advice on that? Yeah.
I think when it comes to these like problems, most of the time, uh, when you ask, like it's about how you ask the questions. So if you ask like, okay, why do you want this? And when you keep asking these things, oh, we really don't need this, we have a workaround, you can get to the epicenter of the problem. So most of the time what happens is, I'll get to it in a bit, that you'd realize that it's actually like one or two things that they really can't do because of some problem. And that's why it's like really difficult to do, right? That's like some of the insights that you realize, okay, it's because of just one or two things, people just use the other alternative, right? The key part of it is identifying that unlock. So for you, like for example, like I was recently listening to WhatsApp, kind of like the founding story of that, right? And in that, one of the key things that Jan mentioned in it is that like earlier WhatsApp was a status app. People were just like sharing statuses, right? Saying,
Okay.
oh, I'm online or whatever, right? But Apple released push notifications, which gave like a technology advantage where now you could like send messages to awaken the app on the phone. That's
Yeah.
like a simple thing, right? But what they did was, okay, you could build SMS for completely free using this new little tech, and that's like the turning point. So
Mm.
your goal is to sort of like swim without dying and find this kind of edge. And if you land on one of those, gold, right?
Okay.
So when and like if this customization question comes along, it's mostly like someone doesn't have a lot of clarity. So if you ask this question repeatedly, like, okay, how does it work? What do you like? What does that do? What would happen if you do it manually? What would happen if you don't do it at all? Sometimes people give you like surprisingly crazy answers, like, oh, nothing will happen, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just that people think it's a problem, right? If you ask
Yeah.
the right questions, you can guide them into thinking like thinking the way, like getting to the truth, right? So
Mm.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Anyone else has any questions up until this point?
Thanks, Dulitha.
No problems. Okay.
I don't see any hands up. Yeah, I think you can go ahead, Dulitha.
No, I think Deepa has hands.
Yeah.
Does
So
she?
like,
Sorry, my
yeah,
bad.
so like you said, like build a like minimum, like base product kind of thing, right? So we are trying to do that, but what about what to do when there's like really competitive market on that? Like what to do then? Because the base product will not just, customer will not, will not accept it. They're like, oh, we have this all other product. Why should I choose you? What to do
I
then?
I think the key of this is this, right? So if you take any market, right, there's this
Mhm.
idea called like crossing the chasm. So what it means is that you'd have customers who are like in the early adopter, early innovator, and like uh, early majority, right? So when you're first building a product, you are actually going to the early adopter, right? And the early adopters usually have an alternative. They usually use like some big software or some shit like that, right? But they don't have like one feature or some like unique thing that they don't have is your wedge. So you enter with your wedge, right? And if you see that, okay, one customer is saying, look, this is like this is not a good entry point, or like, okay, there's this other competitor, why should we go with you? You can actually ask these two questions. Is this customer an early adopter? If not, ignore them, right? Because you're better off trying to sell, like identify an early adopter. The second one is, does the early adopter have enough pain from the existing solution? If not, change your problem. You might have to find something else. That's why I said that it's far worse to go into a market that is like a red ocean and try to like win it. Because like, don't do that. Like, entrepreneurship is about being lazy. That's the first thing, right? So you need to fight, like you need to work on this very patiently to find a way to attack the market in a very lazy way. Because otherwise you will have to like spend a lot of resources to do this. This is not possible. Anybody else? I think no one else, right? So I can continue from this point onwards. All right. So now we spoke about, like, we are speaking about solution design, right? I think in this solution design space, try to get to like a fidelity, or like some sort of a sketch or like a demo that's more like a clickable prototype that you can like start showing to customers and build trust, right? Now, let's say you have shown them something. Now you can also like ask this question a little bit deeper on like, who is the actual customer, right? This question is really important because if you really think about it from an org chart, the response, if it's a B2B product, the responsibility might be very murky. So for example, like right now, the product that we are building for Aristotle, we have head of sales, head of revenue, head of marketing, the CEO. There are like 4 different buyer personas in here. And being aware of that is very important because all 4 of those people care about 4 different things. They don't care about the same thing. And then in your product, the buyer and the user can be different, especially in B2B products, right? The buyer could be like a head position, but the user could be someone else. Why that is important is, if you don't design the workflow that is useful to the user, what would end up happening is you might not be able to get it to good adoption. And when you don't have adoption, it's very hard for you to work inside the problem to identify like how do you build on top of this, right? Because this whole process is for you to get inside, like get through the door. You are never going to find out what is the end result of what you're trying to build. You are just trying to get through the door, right? That's the important thing to realize. When it comes to like B2C product, it's also important to identify, do you have a difference between the buyer and the seller, right? Buyer and the user. Because I have seen like use cases where the user is like a teen, the buyer is parents, right? And if it's completely like, for example, if it's like a social app, if it's the user is like a teen, the way to think about the product would be completely different, right? So be very mindful of who the customer persona is in check, and always ask that question, like, make something people want. People is that customer persona. Who is the people? And be very, very mindful of that, right? Now comes the next test, right? Let's say you design this high fidelity prototype. Then you need to try and see, can you sell it to more customers, right? You go and if you can sell it to more customers, if you can use this to raise capital, you probably, that's a good signal. It's not like it doesn't mean your job is done, but it means that this is like a really good signal for you to invest more time on this problem and solution, right? When you are here, next thing is like this concept called like jobs to be done. This is a little bit more technical, but this is very sort of useful, right? So this is basically the idea of this theory is that people do anything in their lives to make progress, right? And progress happens because of some sort of a struggling moment. So for example, let's say, why would somebody wants to use a new to-do app or something? Is because Excel is slow, right? Or like Excel doesn't have like access control, like someone can come and delete something, and some sort of a struggling moment has happened. With this struggling moment, you would identify like, okay, what is the push of the current situation, pull of the new solution, anxiety of the new solution, and habits of so these sections allow you to sort of identify in more detail why a user is sort of using this, like why do they have this problem, what is like the solution that you are proposing, right? This is a lot more like, this is a little more time consuming because you have to go deeper into it. You will have to put yourself in your user's feet to really get this. And sometimes you'll be very surprised that the struggling moment and the anxieties and things related to this are completely different from the user's perspective, right? It's completely different. I will send you guys like a really good talk by Ryan Singer where he talks about this concept within line with chocolate bars, nothing related to tech, where he takes, there are two, like Mars is one chocolate bar and there's something called Milky Way. He compares like these two chocolate bars and like which chocolate bar works for what. And I think if you guys watch this, you will get this part of this thing completely. But the idea is the higher order idea is that when you understand this from jobs theory, you will realize that people, like some situation gets forced on people, and because of that, they are pushed into new sort of a solution, or like they are pulled by a new solution because it's much more like there's some sort of a intrinsic value. So your job is to sort of be present at these struggling moments or create a struggling moment, right? So when you start viewing it from this desk lens, you become a lot more sophisticated about what you are like sort of working on. In what I've identified is that this point is probably like very time consuming. It takes at least like 1 or 2 months for you to like really empathize and really understand the domain and the customer is. So again, be very sure when you come to this step that everything else is on check. Otherwise, you will like waste a lot of time, right? Once you have identified this, you basically get like a sort of like jobs to be done statements. If you like, I'll send you like some statements that are already created. But like for example, like if it's a project management SaaS, jobs to be done is help teams to collaborate efficiently to complete projects on time within budget. These are like example. And if you really break this down, you can ask like project management SaaS struggling moment. Team becomes frustrated with inefficient email threads, misplaced documents, and lack of real-time collaboration. Push of this is projects are falling behind schedule to poor communication. Pull, the desire for centralized system where all elements of projects are transparent and accessible. Anxieties, apprehension about transitioning to a new system and learning curve involved. Habits, this is like what is the user was doing before. Now that it's very hard for you to break because they're already used to what they were doing. So comfort with using familiar but inefficient tools. Like it's like, for example, if you try to break someone from the Excel workflow, it's like if they are very set on it, it's really hard to do that, right? This is like this jobs to be done statement. Anyone have any questions on this? This is probably, I can't explain this like quite fast. This would take you guys a little bit of time. I'll send you some talks to watch. But any high level questions you guys have?
Hi.
Yeah.
I have a small question. Like it's also because you keep mentioning Excel, and ironically, Excel is the alternative that my users are using. I'm building a contract management system, and currently the organizations I talk to, they use Excel, right? And like you said, they're very attached because lawyers are the ones who mainly use it, and they're like, oh, we're used to using this, right?
Mm.
It's hard, it's difficult. They admit it, but they're also like, oh, but we're used to, looking through each and every record on the Excel sheet. And we found ones who want to convert, but how do you really help them break out of the habit is like the question.
I think the way to think about it is that let me just so this is the way to like think about this, right? So usually what happens is they get forced on some sort of a circumstance,
Mhm.
right? The circumstance might be like, okay, now like Excel doesn't work because there are too many people, right?
Yeah.
That one person workflow doesn't work. So like now they have this idea where like I want to go there, which is like other side of it, right? So
Yeah.
if you paint them a picture that, oh, you have this real-time system where you can like do this, blah, 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 that's the solution, right? But now to cross from here, you have all these like, that's the push of the situation. The pull of the new solution is all the new swanky features you are going to give them, right?
Yeah.
Then the anxiety of the new solution is like, okay, like is it hard to use, or like all these kind of like anxieties. And habit of the present is like I already use Excel, like I don't have to install new things, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The way for you to think about it is all of this needs to be stronger for you to push away from this side.
Yeah.
The pull of the new solution needs to be really good the push of the situation, like, I have like 10 people now. Excel doesn't really work. Like, imagine like some newcomer comes in and deletes like a whole row. Like, it's that when people hear, if you ask from people the questions like, what would happen? Like, you should never say to them the exact thing I said. You should ask like, what happens if someone comes, when you have new people, what would happen? So you can poke the bear enough for them to feel like they have a struggling, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like sort of like a tactic that I kind of have figured out.
Okay. Yeah.
Anybody else? Looks like no one else. All right. So let's go to the next part of it. This is like the fun part, which is like building part of it. So okay, like what I said earlier, have like a pitch that you can do in 2 minutes to a potential customer, because this pitch is very important for you to identify like what is the real core of the problem. So for example, when you try to build a system, you think like, oh, you need login, sign up, forget my password, user management. You will end up building like sort of like a 20, 25, 50 page thing. But actually, if you think about it, almost like it's like a 80-20 rule, right? Only 20% of it is the real epicenter of the thing, right? It's just 20%. Everything else is just like added stuff, right? They might like help some sort of edge case. Your goal is to find this 20%, because this 20% poses the real risk. And in that 20%, you have to ask this question, is there like a technical innovation involved in this? Like, do you actually have to make a fundamental technical breakthrough? And if so, how do you de-risk that before like building anything? So for example, in our product that we are building, we have a technical innovation, which is like, we have to build a system that does like real-time tracking of all sorts of things, identify signals out of that. We built like a backend script of how you do it as the first step. We didn't like make any UI, none of that stuff. Why? Because if we can't do this backend Python script, like dirty way of getting this thing done, everything else is lost. So you'd focus and you take a week, you build that and see whether it's actually possible. So now you know that technically it's de-risked. If it's like a larger problem, you might have to even break this down to like small buckets and see if it is technically possible. Once you are like absolutely sure it's technically possible in small broken down parts, you can ask the next question: what is the epicenter? Like what is that 80-20 rule of like, what is that 20% that gives the 80% to the user from their side? And most of the time, this lands into being like one screen, right? It just becomes like one screen. And all the other screens that in your app or anything that is there is like either onboarding flows or like settings or like some sort of a weird thing that you have to do, but they are not really important. What is important would be just like 1 or 2 screens. And this is the part where you have to be brutally honest, and like if you do the job right on this, you would know exactly, if I build just this thing, I will know whether the user will find it useful or not, right? And but the other rule is like, try to build as little as possible, try to manually onboard users. Like for example, for our product, even we have like 5 to 10 users now, we don't have onboarding. Like we deliberately never built one, because we have Notion page. You go like put your input, we go to the database, put the data. It's like very rudimentary. Why? Because building that is not essential, right? And you like try to use like off-the-shelf stuff as much as possible for your, the initial, like some of these like things like authentication, all that kind of stuff. So there's a product called Clerk. You can use like that'll manage like authentication, authorizations, like user management side of stuff, right? So that's like the kind of like the base case, right? I would also say that if you want to like make some UIs for your team or for yourself to use the product, there's another tool called Retool, which you can use to build internal tools, which is like a very fast way for you to like kind of build kind of UIs. It's not really good on customer facing, but for internal tooling, it's quite useful. So try to see if you can use this, because the time you shave would be like, it's another 80-20. You might be able to build like 80% of what you want with like 20% less time. The caveat here is that it's not like really great user experience, but if it's like a backend, you don't give a shit about user experience. What you need to do is like identify what is that biggest like 80-20 screen or like 80-20 feature that you need, get that done. If you identify this enough or it right, you will be able to write a release note or an onboarding email saying, hey, customer, like we have done this thing. This is what you need to do to get started. Like, this is the screen. Like, you will be able to write a release note even without building anything. You will have to do the if you're doing a technical de-risking, you have to do that. But the other part of it, you can basically write onboarding email, right? Once you write an onboarding email, you will know exactly what, like whether you have a good idea of the that 80-20 of what you need to build. Next is asking this question of, okay, now you need to build this thing. The rule that I have found that works is most software can be built in 2 weeks, especially if the tech is de-risk, you can build most of it in 2 weeks. But the last 20% of completion takes 80% of the time. That's why, like, if you like usually have like done software projects, it always gets delayed because the last 20% takes a lot of time. And be prepared for that, right? And when you're shipping, like when you set up like ambitious goals, you'd say, hey, we would ship it in 2 weeks. You would end up shipping it in 4 weeks or like 8 weeks. That's okay. The key thing is keep your morale up, that you would know that you'd be able to ship that initial version as fast as possible to the user. And try to keep these time boxes like extremely unrealistic, right? So, for example, like the first de-risk thing that I did, I put like an extremely unrealistic thing. I said, like, I'm going to do this in a weekend, right? I managed to get 80% of it done in a weekend, but the last 20% took like 2-3 days. But still, I got my job done, right? I want to make progress fast, right? So try to keep these like very tight time boxes when it comes to like shipping. The first release is like accept the fact that your product is going to be hilariously early, like it won't have the greatest UI UX, all that stuff, right? And the goal is to sort of like validate your hypothesis. Like, did you build something people really want, right? And like this can be from all of these things. Like you will know when people like really want something. The kind of comments they give you, how easy for you to like sell it to another person, you will like, there's no like measurable thing to explain it, but you will know it, right? So I call this idea like when you make a jelly and you put it, like you sort of like make it in a basket, it doesn't jiggle until it's on a plate, right? So until your product is like in the hands of the user, you would never know if the jelly will jiggle, right? So give it to hands of users, and then you will know whether the product is actually useful or not, right? So once you go to this step, you will get to like, okay, now you have some sort of a foundation. So in the foundation step, you will know now if people are using the product, you will know that the product is actually something that works in loops. So you will have the first time, the onboarding loop, the first time loop, the second time loop and the loop where they will find that magic moment, right? If you followed this process, you would have not built the onboarding loop. You would have built the first time, and now you'd be thinking about the second time loop. And then you will think about the sort of like the magic moment, like you will try to identify what is that magic moment of the loop, right? If all of this is like done and sorted, you would kind of have to really think about what is the metric that you're tracking. Like, for example, like, is it like, do you want users to be daily active inside the product, or do you want the user to, like, clear out X many contracts? Or, like, for example, like if it's a consumer app, like a fitness app, you can be like, do you want the user to work out 3 times a week? That's your metric. And you can start to sort of like go to more of a repeatable process at that stage. And the key here is that between any of these stages, you should be okay to go back completely to here, which is very painful. Like that's sort of like the pivot of sort, right? In this like exploration stage, I wouldn't call these like pivots. I would just call this as like, you're just doing the same thing. Like there's no pivots, right? Because nothing is set in, the concrete is not set, right? So try to, when you get to this end of this tunnel, and if you are really, really confident that, look, this is lit, like there is like people like really want this problem. Like if I talk to like 10 customers, like 7 of them like want to use this solution. That's the moment that you need to get to the next stage, right? So that this concludes sort of my, I think I have taken like probably an hour of you guys' time. This is like the end of it. Any questions that you guys want to
Dulitha, on that, we have a hard stop at 9:30. So I think any questions that they have, we'll get them to contact you directly, or like either on WhatsApp or LinkedIn to get the answers. We can also do an additional office hour with you later, right? Because I think there is a lot more to that decision tree also, right? So let me have a, like, we'll coordinate that, but I think we do need to stop, because I think we initially expected it to be like a half-an-hour session, but I also didn't want to interrupt it because you were giving a lot of really valuable information, and there are a lot of mentors who go in such detail into how you really think about it and how you do it in a very practical way, right? So I think it was really useful for the founders. So let us go back on gallery view. Okay, so any questions that you have, like,
Hi,
you can.
Amy,
Yes.
may I have a question?
Hold on a second. I'll let the other founders go. Like, we'll wrap up the session. If anyone wants to stay after, they can ask questions, but I don't want to keep everybody here because I know we have a hard stop at 9:30 and we've been here since 6:30, right? So it's like a full 3-hour session. For some people, it's 10 o'clock in the night, right? If you're in Bangladesh, and 9:45 in Nepal. So if anyone needs to go, you can go, right? But anyone who would like, if you're welcome to stay on, but if anyone here needs to leave, feel free to do so, right? And people who want to stay and on, you all can ask questions from Dulitha, no problem. Dulitha, you don't have a problem staying, right? Because I only asked for half an hour of your time. So if you don't mind, we're happy to.
I can stay for 5 minutes.
Okay, so Dulitha can have 5 more minutes. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, feel free to do so. And if anyone needs to leave, like, you can leave, right?
Hi, Dulitha. My question is, I am from bus ticketing startup, online bus ticketing startup, and to onboard the bus owner, I have to deal with multiple stakeholder of the bus. Suppose if in a single bus company there are 10 to 15 bus owners.
Okay.
Which have like 20-30 buses, like maybe some has the 150 buses, and I have onboarded one bus committee with 18 buses. which had 18 to 20 bus owners, and I deal with in starting I deal with 4 to 5 bus owners, and later I have to deal with 18 to 20 bus owners in a group.
Okay.
So, and right now I am expanding and scaling it, and I am dealing with multiple bus owners right now. But it
Mhm.
is becoming a little bit difficult to deal with every bus owners. Is there any strategy tactics so that I can onboard multiple bus committee in a faster way?
So if I get this correct, bus committees have bus owners, right?
Bus committee is multiple bus owners is combined into one bus committee.
Okay, okay.
Suppose
Yeah, go ahead.
suppose ABC travel is the bus committee, then there can be multiple buses names like X bus, Y bus, Z bus, different bus, simple bus committee, and they
But
run on.
who are you like in from what I understand, the buyer is then you want the buyer to be the bus committee, right? So
Right.
what is the struggling moment for the bus committee? Like why would they want you guys? What's the
There are two main things. One main thing, the first priority is they don't have the ticket management system. Second is they have only one channel of the gaining the passengers, and they want to be digital.
Okay. So basically I think the way to ask these questions is thinking it's not that they don't have a ticket managing system, that they probably have a lot of manual processes where it's very painful for them to expand their business or keep their business from running. Like it's a continuity problem, right? And maybe the way to do this is that in your sort of messaging, like when you get that the initial landing page or the blurb, it needs to highlight this pain really accurately well, because people don't want ticketing systems. They want to know, solve their daily operational one person, for example, if the team loses one member, now how does it work? Like the manual process is not good enough to add more customers, etc. So you need to paint the picture of how painful it is for them to get to that struggling moment. The other thing that you mentioned is that more revenue thing, right? Expand a new channel. One of the other things I have found out that's really works is paint the picture from a very competitive angle. Don't paint the picture with oh, you will get additional revenue. Paint the picture oh, look, the market is moving and others are doing this, so you will be left behind. It's a very different way of thinking about it, right? Because it causes you to have a different sort of an allure for the new solution. It's not oh, I can get additional revenue. It's that, oh, the other guy is getting it now, we are going to lose. People start thinking different, right? So maybe those are two things that I can think of right now.
So actually, suppose if you are the boss owners in Nepal, then you had 3 to 4 person to just find the passengers and collect in the bus, and with that channel they collect the passenger for the bus every day.
Can you repeat that again? I don't think I quite understand.
Suppose you are running a bus company and you need the passengers, and there are multiple bus company in a bus park. Yeah, and to get the passenger in the particular bus, you had 3 to 4 person. For your as a staff as agent, and that person collect the passengers and for their bus, and they can't fulfill all the seats with that passenger. Suppose there is a 40 seat capacity in the bus, they only get the 20-30 passengers, sometimes 10 to 15 passengers. That is the problem. and we are helping them to do marketing like SMS marketing, email marketing, notification marketing with our platform.
Yeah,
So
I
that
think like I am probably not the best person to give you like feedback on this. What you need to do is like create like a pitch of this, like, or what you say, and like the blurb and kind of like a landing page of sort, and talk to your customer and see the reaction. Like imagine like this is a very subtle exercise where sometimes one word might be a game changer, right?
right.
It's like that whole like the jobs theory thing is a like it's a complete game changer if you really run it properly. I will send you guys like there's a person called April Dunford. She's like a positioning expert, and she has like position things with like few different words that make or break them, right? And that's why I'm saying that it's like sometimes one word or two words in the way you explain something means completely different things.
Yeah, that is the marketing message, right?
Yeah, and don't think of it this as marketing message, right? It is basically what you do. Don't think of this as something that you need to get an expert to do it or whatever, right? That's just bullshit, right? You
That is
need
the
to,
core values.
yeah, you need to know exactly what's the word, like what is the word that makes your customers' eyes go like, ooh, okay, this is the thing.
For right now, we customize the application for them, and we say you don't need to give commission to any person. Your money will come in your bank account, and these words excite them, and they are onboarding our platform.
You might also want to like quantitatively see this as well. Like, let's say you speak to like 10 customers, right? 10 bus committees. And if you change the pitch a little bit, if like 8 out of those 10 sign up, that means it's very repeatable, right?
Right.
Like the tactics you should use after you figure out a repeatable pitch is very different from whatever I talked about. Like,
Right.
they're very different. Then you are like in a different journey. You need to hire sales reps. Like it's like a completely different. Like the advice I said is not applicable at that point.
Yeah, and there is also a giant competitor in the market, right now.
Okay. I think when it comes to competition, he is like identifying that wedge. Try to identify like a wedge where something that they have missed. And
Yeah.
most of the time, this is either due to like a business model or new tech or like some sort of a user experience. Like they don't understand the user enough, right? So those are like the three times that I have seen like this work out. Anybody else have any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajesh. Happy to help.
Let's see. I don't see any hands up. Sanju has asked whether you can share the links for the videos and documents you mentioned while you were doing your training. You mentioned quite a few actually.
Especially with the one with the chocolate bars.
Oh yeah, I'll send it to you right now.
Yeah.
Just see if this is openable.
See. Taking a little bit of time to open. Yeah, it's loaded. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to. I'm gonna send you guys all those links because otherwise I might forget it. Just gonna send it all. Then.
Dulitha, I think you're sending it to me only.
Hi, I'm April Dunford. In this talk, we're going to explore a little.
Hold on, I'll first send all the links at once and then I'll send them back.
Okay.
What are the other ones I promised? I will send you guys. 1 minute. I put up for this one.
The one for the talk by I forgot her name, about the jobs theory.
Well, I'll send that out. One was like Bob Mesca. There's Bob Mesca.
I think one of the biggest
Like, okay, all these. These are all the links. I think like if I were to like give you guys like one final thought, like this initial part of the journey is like, quite turbulent, right? And you might not feel like you are making progress all the time because like, you're going back to the drawing board a couple of times. The thing is, it's okay to like know and wonder and find this out, because if you don't get it right initially, it's very painful to correct it afterwards. It's like very, very painful. And try to be brutally honest with yourself on, is this something people want? Do they have a hair on fire problem? All of that. Because otherwise what happens is that you might go on a journey, but you might not actually get the outcome you want. Because like everything else becomes like you might find like the thing is this is why I emphasize the fact that try to be lazy as possible, because hard work sometimes sort of fails you at this, because you can work hard and make like cram this down customers' throats and like make pitch to 100 investors, get funding. Like you can work hard and do this, but the truth is you need to work lazy enough where the market gives you an opportunity, right? Try to pivot enough inside of it to find an entry point where the market gives you an entry. And that's the point where like, oh shit, okay, we have the market actually pulls the product out of it. That's what that really means. Like if you then at that point you can work, like you can like put all your energy. Try to have that dichotomy on your mind, right? Otherwise it becomes really easy to like fool yourself.
All right, thanks a lot, Dulitha. I think you did an amazing session with a lot of really, really good insights. And like we've been asking the founders like what kind of sessions they want, and they said they wanted like the more in-depth ones where they actually learned a lot. So I think in that sense, this is a really, really useful session. A long one, but I think, it's still very helpful, right? Like, because you see a lot of sessions, but like this one was really, really practical. So thank you so much for taking the time to do it for us. Yeah. Does anyone, okay, so if there are no more questions, shall I wrap up? I think we can stop the recording, no?